On my wedding day, my mother-in-law forced me to wear a necklace with her initials, then I saw the inscription, "You'll never be good enough," and my best friend screamed, "Take that off now." Right before I walked down the aisle, my mother-in-law handed me a necklace she said was a family heirloom. It had her initials on it, and I didn't want to cause drama, so I wore it. But then, in the bridal suite, my best friend looked closer and found something I hadn't noticed. The engraving said, "You'll never be good enough." She screamed, "Take that off now." And when I showed it to my fiancé, he just stared blankly. No anger, no words, no defense. That's when I realized this marriage was a mistake. I didn't go through with it. I was 28 when this happened. I'm 38 now. It's been a full decade, but I remember every second like I'm still standing in that chapel. I was living in Rockport, Massachusetts, when I met Alec. A coastal town, the kind that makes tourists gasp but the locals grumble. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, doing remote contracts for small Boston companies, and Alec was a finance guy. Wealthy family, summer homes, and parents with friends on museum boards. You get the picture. We met at an art opening in Salem. I had some sketches hanging, and Alec was there because his cousin had a sculpture in the exhibit. He complimented my work, not in a flirty way but in this thoughtful, observant tone. We talked for hours that night. It felt easy. I was usually guarded with men, but he disarmed me. Alec was respectful, kind, and intelligent. He had this quiet charisma and a softness around me that made me feel safe. He listened. He asked real questions. He introduced me to his friends, took me on thoughtful dates, and genuinely seemed interested in my passions, even if his world was spreadsheets and stock options. I fell for him hard. And a year and a half later, he proposed at Halibut Point, overlooking the Atlantic on a foggy morning. He got down on one knee, shaking a little, and when I said yes, I really meant it. I believed we were going to build something beautiful together. I didn't know then that Alec's mother, Henrietta, would become the central figure in the unraveling of everything. I'd only met her a few times before the engagement. Each time was subtly degrading. She had that specific kind of rich, old New England coldness. Always polite, always smiling, and somehow always cutting you down without raising her voice. At our engagement dinner, she offered a toast that included the phrase, "Marissa has such spirit, so independent. She doesn't let convention burden her." Which sounds like a compliment until you realize she was referring to me not having gone to a reputable college or not wearing designer clothing. I tried to win her over. I really did. I wore the dresses she'd comment approvingly on, nodded along when she made borderline offensive jokes about today's culture, and even let her weigh in on wedding planning decisions to avoid conflict. I thought maybe, eventually, she'd accept me. Instead, she tried to control every detail. The wedding had to be at the Larkspur Family Chapel in Stockbridge, in western Massachusetts. It was beautiful, historic, stone architecture, lush garden, but it wasn't me. I had dreamed of a beach wedding, barefoot in the sand, music playing as the waves crashed nearby. But Alec told me gently that it would mean a lot to his parents to have it at the chapel. I compromised. Henrietta vetoed our caterer. She brought in her family's preferred chef. She replaced the florist I had already paid a deposit on. She even rewrote the seating chart I spent hours on, claiming certain people couldn't be near others. I told Alec I was overwhelmed. He told me, "She's just being thorough. She does this to everyone." He brushed it off, but he didn't push back. The day before the wedding, during the rehearsal dinner at Henrietta's home, she pulled me aside in her grand living room, filled with oil paintings and porcelain clocks. She handed me a small navy blue velvet box. I thought it was a bracelet at first. "It's an heirloom," she said, smoothing the collar of her linen blouse. "All Larkspur brides have worn this necklace on their wedding day. It's a family tradition." I opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a thin chain and a small, old-fashioned heart-shaped pendant. Engraved on the back were the initials HL. I didn't know what to say. It was clearly expensive. I hadn't planned to wear a necklace with my dress, but she was watching me, her expression neutral and expectant. "Thank you," I said, smiling, trying to keep the peace. She nodded once and walked away without another word. The next morning, I got ready in the bridal room of the chapel, an old converted study filled with antique mirrors and dusty lace curtains. My dress was hanging, pressed and pristine. Soria, my best friend since college, was with me. She was the only bridesmaid I'd insisted on having. We didn't do a full bridal party. Henrietta didn't like that either. Soria was zipping me into my dress when I remembered the necklace. Oh, she gave me this last night, I said, holding up the box. Soria narrowed her eyes immediately. From Henrietta, I shrugged. Apparently it's a Larkspur bride thing. Since when are you a Larkspur bride? I ignored the sting of that truth and opened the box. The necklace glinted in the morning light. I put it on. The chain was light, the pendant resting right above my collarbone. Soria leaned closer to look. Her eyes scanned the charm, and then her whole face changed. Wait, turn it over again. What? The pendant, turn it. I flipped the heart over and held it up to the mirror. The initials were there. But underneath, so faint it was almost like a shadow, was a second line of engraving. You'll never be good enough. I stared at it, at my own stunned reflection, not breathing. Soria recoiled like the necklace had burned her. You're not wearing that, she said flatly. Take it off, right now. I didn't move. Marissa. Take it off. My hands were shaking, but I unclasped it and dropped it in the sink. My stomach was twisting. I didn't know what I felt more, rage or disbelief. She gave this to me knowing I'd wear it today, I whispered. I was still staring at the sink when Alec walked in. We're ready to start. He paused when he saw Soria's face, then mine. I held out the necklace. Your mother gave this to me. He took it. He turned it over. He read the inscription. He didn't gasp, he didn't drop it. He just stared at it like it was a minor inconvenience. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know. Soria's voice cut through the silence. And what are you going to do about it? Alec didn't answer. He looked at me. She was out of line, I get that, but it's still our day. That's when something inside me snapped, or maybe something just clicked into place. He wasn't going to protect me. He never had. He never would. I walked past him out of the bridal suite through the side hallway of the chapel. The music was starting. The guests were seated. The flowers were perfect. And I walked straight to Henrietta, who was standing near the front pew, chatting with a cousin. I held the necklace up between us. Did you write this? She looked at it, then at me. Her lips curled just slightly. You needed to know where you stood, she said, right there, in front of everyone. I turned around and walked out of the chapel, and I kept walking. I walked out of the chapel with my dress swishing behind me like a broken promise. The sun had started to creep over the stone archway, and I remember the way it lit up the gravel path ahead of me. Every step I took away from that building felt heavier and lighter at the same time, like I was both mourning and freeing myself. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Soria caught up to me halfway down the driveway, breathless, her heels in one hand. You good? I shook my head. She looked at my face for a long moment and then didn't ask another question. She just walked beside me, barefoot, like we were going anywhere but there. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream or rage or collapse. I just kept walking toward the edge of the estate grounds, where the winding drive met the outer road that led back to town. The only thing I could think about was the way Alec looked at that necklace, like it was an awkward joke at a family dinner. Something you pretend not to hear so the night can move on. Except it wasn't a joke. It was a message, a declaration. And in that moment, I realized I had been trying to shrink myself into a shape that Henrietta would find acceptable. I had shaved down parts of who I was, little by little, for a year and a half. No wonder I felt hollow standing in that dress, in that chapel, wearing a pendant engraved with quiet cruelty. Henrietta hadn't just sabotaged the day. She had defined the relationship from the beginning, one in which I was always meant to feel lucky just to be tolerated. Alec didn't see it. Or worse, he did, and thought it was something I should simply survive. About 15 minutes later, we reached the outer gate, and Soria called us a car. Neither of us spoke much on the ride back to the inn where we were supposed to be getting ready. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was like she knew words wouldn't help yet. The innkeeper, an older woman named Jeanette, met us at the door. She had this calm, almost maternal energy. When she saw me in my dress and Soria holding a bouquet under one arm and her shoes in the other, her eyes widened. I take it that things didn't go as planned, she said softly. I laughed. Or maybe I choked on a laugh. You could say that. She didn't ask anything else. She just ushered us in, handed us tea, and told us we could take all the time we needed. I'll never forget that small kindness. I sat in my room for a while after that, just staring at the flowers by the windowsill, the faint lace pattern on my sleeves, and the place on my chest where that necklace had rested. The red mark from the chain was still there. The symbolism was almost too obvious. That afternoon, I finally took off the dress. I didn't cry when I unzipped it. I didn't cry when I stepped out of it. But when I folded it and put it gently back in the bag, I felt a sharp pang in my chest that I still can't fully name. Not sadness. No regret. Something heavier. Something like mourning a life that almost happened. Around 4 p.m., my phone started vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, texts, Alec, his sister, his father, even a couple of his friends. Some were apologizing, some were begging me to reconsider. One of them, a cousin I barely knew, actually sent a message saying, "Don't punish Alec for his mother's actions. He loves you." That was the one that made me angry. Love isn't just flowers and proposals and early morning coffee runs. It's what you do when someone hurts the person you claim to care about. It's what you say when that person is publicly humiliated. It's who you stand beside when things get ugly. Alec had stood beside no one. I turned off my phone after that. Later that evening, Soria brought up a bottle of cheap champagne from the mini fridge and said, "Well, we paid for this night. Might as well drink our way through it." We sat on the floor in our pajamas, drinking from paper cups. The ceremony never happened. The reception was canceled. Word spread fast through the family that I'd walked out. I didn't care what anyone thought. I just kept picturing that moment, Henrietta's face as she read the engraving, so calm, so proud of what she'd done. It was like she believed she'd won, but it didn't feel like that to me. The next morning, I packed my things. I left the dress behind. I didn't want it. I didn't want the memories sewn into the seams. Alec called one last time. I let it ring. Then I blocked his number. Soria drove me back to Rockport in silence, letting me stare out at the changing leaves, the ocean glimpses between trees, the winding hills of Massachusetts that I'd once dreamed of building a life in. It didn't feel like a loss. It felt like something I had escaped from just in time. When we got to my apartment, there was a delivery box on the doorstep. It had no return address, but I knew immediately who it was from. Inside was the necklace, the same one, same initials, same engraving, no note, nothing else. Just the message, once again, "You'll never be good enough." I dropped it in the trash without a second thought. But that night I couldn't sleep. Not because of Alec, not because of the wedding, but because I realized that this had always been about more than a necklace. It had been about the subtle erosion of who I was. The way I had allowed small insults to slide by. The way I had convinced myself that compromise meant swallowing my instincts. The way I had mistaken silence for diplomacy and avoidance for peace. Henrietta hadn't destroyed anything. She had exposed it. She had revealed every crack and weakness in the foundation Alec and I had built. She had forced me to make a choice. And I did. I chose me. The necklace stayed in the trash. For a week, I left it there, buried under coffee grounds, takeout containers, and old paper towels. I didn't pull it out, didn't even think about keeping it just in case. It belonged to a life that never happened. A life I'd left standing at the altar. But I didn't move on right away. I stayed in Rockport, where the sea was still honest, and the gulls still screamed like they were auditioning for the end of the world. I started working again, slowly, mostly small design gigs, then a mural project at a local bakery. Something about putting color on a blank wall made it easier to reclaim space in my own mind. Soria checked in constantly. She'd been my shield during the worst of it, but after the wedding that wasn't, she became something more, proof that when everything falls apart, the right people won't just show up. They stay. It took a few months before I stopped flinching when I heard Alec's name, or when I saw a gold chain dangling from someone's neck. I even started dating again, eventually, but with a very different kind of awareness. I paid attention to the quiet things, how people reacted when I said no, how they spoke about their families, how they made me feel when I was silent. And then, about a year later, something strange happened. Henrietta reached out. I got a letter, a real one, cream envelope, expensive paper, no return address, just a Larkspur family seal stamped in red wax. Inside, it was a short note in slanted cursive. "I trust time has given you clarity. Alec is moving on as he should. I thought you might wish to return the necklace. It is a Larkspur heirloom after all." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a final jab, wrapped in faux civility. I laughed when I read it. Not bitterly, Just the kind of laugh you let out when the absurdity of someone's ego finally becomes funny. But it gave me an idea. Not revenge in the dramatic, cruel sense. I didn't want her to suffer. I didn't need to ruin her. She was already stuck inside her own glass castle of superiority. But I could make a point. So I pulled the necklace from the trash. Well, technically from the bottom of a bag I double-wrapped before tossing. It was still intact, still vile. Then I had it cleaned. I took it to a local jeweler, Anita, a kind woman with steady hands and no questions. I asked her to polish it up and do a few modifications. First, we removed the back plate of the pendant entirely. Then, in its place, I had Anita inscribe a new message. I was always more than enough. Beneath that, I added, Emmy, my initials, bold, centered, but I wasn't finished. I reached out to a friend from Boston, Harper, who ran a small art gallery. I pitched an idea, a collection based on women reclaiming their narratives. Portraits, artifacts, letters, and objects that had once been used to diminish or define them, but were now reimagined. Harper loved it. She called it Restored. I contributed one piece. It was displayed in a glass case under a spotlight. The larkspur necklace previously used to undermine a bride, currently owned by the woman who walked away. Next to it was a printed story, not a rant, not a tell-all. Just the facts, written with quiet dignity. I didn't name names, I didn't have to. The necklace told enough of the story. The opening night of the gallery was small, elegant, and filled with thoughtful conversations. People stopped at the necklace. They read the story. I saw women's faces change as they read it, some nodding, some exhaling like they'd been holding something in for years. It got picked up in a local Boston arts magazine, then online. It wasn't viral exactly, but it had traction. A few weeks later, a radio station reached out and asked if I'd be willing to talk about the exhibit. I agreed. I told the story plainly. No embellishment, just what happened. How someone tried to rewrite my worth in 14 letters, and how I rewrote it back. I never heard from Henrietta again. I imagined she saw it. Someone in her world would have mentioned it, maybe that distant cousin with too much time online. But I think she knew better than to send another letter. As for Alec, he messaged me once, almost 2 years after the wedding. It was short. I saw the exhibit. I didn't realize how much I didn't see back then. I'm sorry. I didn't reply, not out of spite, just peace. I didn't need anything from him anymore, not validation, not regret, not an attempt at closure. I had already found it. The necklace sits in my studio now. Not in a drawer, on a shelf. A reminder, not a wound. And here's the truth. I didn't walk away from a wedding that day. I walked away from a lifetime of being made small. Henrietta gave me a gift in the end. Not the necklace, but the clarity. She handed me the final puzzle piece to a picture I hadn't been able to finish on my own. And I used it, not to burn bridges, but to build something far more lasting. Something with my name on it. Something that finally felt like mine.